said, unless the insecurities of the Precariat were addressed in the very near future, a political monster would emerge. But sooner or later, people who face chronic insecurity and falling incomes and falling living standards, when they see what's happening elsewhere, become dysfunctionally irrational and support monsters. It's a reality of history that we should all remember.
Well, again, with disempowerment and isolation comes fear and aggression. These types of attitudes lead people into very dark places. And when you can't see any way out, you start clutching at straws. And unfortunately, in the political climate that we're in at the moment, these straws are extremists. Whether they're extremists in religion, or whether they're extremists in politics, or whether they're extremists in the actual class system, what it leads to is individuals feeling so helpless that anybody that they see that is opposite to what they think is wrong, they will try and support, because they see that as maybe a way of, if they support that, that will pull them out of this mire that they're in.
And you feel the pain and the anger, and the reality is that more and more people understand they're part of the Precariat. And more people are not feeling like failures or useless people, but they're feeling that they share this experience, and they want to get in touch with other people, and they want to do something about it. So although we're seeing some ugly political developments, we're also seeing some energy and new movements being formed. New political movements, new social movements, new consciousness that only if we revolt and make a nuisance of ourselves will change come. And I think that is a very pertinent lesson of where we are.
I mean, what people used to have, probably not that long ago, is a connectedness. You know, you had it with unions and communities and all this stuff, and there was industry and work and stuff like that. And people have been disconnected with that connected idea and be forced into a kind of individual, look after number one kind of thing, isolation. And the interesting thing, ironic as it is the thing that's bringing them together again is the precariousness of their life. And that precariousness that Standing's talking about is, you know, you find it in poor communities, you know, 0 hours, cheap labour everywhere, but you also find it in university students, and it's kind of reaching the middle classes as well, because there's all these people leaving university and education, they don't have a job to go to. I mean, it used to be you could get a job teaching or something. There was always an outlet. If you didn't find your particular field, you could always get into education and stuff like that. But that's these educated people, university educated people, have become part of the Precariat as well. Yes. So it's kind of like not a very nice situation to be in, but it's creating what he's talking about as a new class, you know, a new class of people. And I suppose it's the idea, well, if we've got all this in common, we want to start
looking at the similarities rather than the differences.
And doing something about it. But that's kind of what it means by Precariat.
Well, again, the precarious situation of standing at a cliff edge. So if you're standing there, that's a precarious situation for you. So the idea of us standing at this cliff edge of vagrancy, because in effect, that's what happens these days. If you lose your job and you're not getting benefits, then you end up with sanctions, or you end up at a food bank, and basically It's driving us towards a vagrant society.
Was that a basic income should not be seen in isolation. It must be seen as part of a new progressive policy. We're gaining support in surprising quarters, but we don't want to lose our main focus. When I go to the United States, and I'm going there again next week, surprisingly, there's a lot of libertarian support for basic income coming from the right. And for them, they have a very warped view of life. They want to dismantle the social state and put some sort of minimalist version of a basic income in its place. Now, we have to confront that perspective. And I say to my friends on the left, just because they are supporting it doesn't mean we should not. Don't be fooled. But at the same time, we have to confront that libertarian perspective. I don't feel defensive about it, and I don't feel that those people on the left should be running away from the idea of a basic income as part of a progressive strategy.
So what he's speaking about there is there's a lot of support for the idea of a universal basic wage, but for the wrong reasons. These guys in America, the money men, saying that great, give everybody $1,000 a month and we can forget about everything else.
Yeah.
So we need to understand that the universal wage is just one idea towards creating other ideas. It's not a be-all and end-all. It's just a thing that will get people going so we can progress into doing other useful things. It's not a payoff to keep people quiet. It's a kind of payoff to make people unquiet.
It's also got to be a recognition that there is no job market.
And you have to create your own.
Yeah. And the only way to create these is actually to allow society the freedom, the financial freedom, to find a way to regenerate itself. Things don't regenerate by themselves. It's not spontaneous. So there needs to be a catalyst, and the catalyst is the UBI. It's not the solution, it's only the catalyst to the solution. It would allow us, the idea of, freedom to have time to look after your kid, or freedom to have time to look after yourself, as opposed to the freedom to stay in work for 18 hours a day.
The two great needs we have are basic income, security, and voice. The one without the other is not good enough. Because if you gave a person a basic income and they had no voice in society, no agency, then very quickly the exploiters will take away their money. So it's important to see the basic income as part of a progressive strategy, where new forms of voice are part of that agenda.
Because right now, again, being tied to whatever responsibility within the hierarchy of the class system that we have at the moment, it's just far too top heavy, and no one at the bottom end has any kind of voice. So the only way that would actually balance out is if the idea of the basic income allows us to say that we can equally access these services, because there is that financial freedom. Well, universal basic income would, for a single stroke, would wipe out the ability for the authorities to sanction individuals. Irrespective of what part of society that you're in, sanctions should be looked on as punishment. And not only punishment for the individual that is being sanctioned, but that's punishment for the children, that's punishment for the spouse, that's punishment for any person or animal that person has responsibility for. Well, it's as isolated as that, because they don't want to include the humanity of it or any emotion in it. So it is like that. It is like that kind of transaction.
successive governments, have facilitated a process by which rental income is gained by a tiny minority. So-called intellectual property, ideas, have been turned into property to give huge incomes to a minority through institutional structures, not through any hard work that people do. Subsidies by the state, huge subsidies are paid out by governments to tiny minorities. They're highly regressive. They worsen inequality and they suck income out of the precariat. Debt mechanisms have been constructed which create a flow of income to the rentiers. In addition, the commons, our commons, have been plundered, commercialized, privatized, sold, giving rental income to people who've never contributed to the wealth of our whole society.
So basically what he's saying there is people, well, landlords, for instance, go to bed at night and they're waking up and they're richer and they've done nothing.
Yes.
It's people gaining all this money and all this wealth for doing nothing.
Whereas you have the ordinary people waking up every morning with another, with more debt added. With
Wonder where
interest.
they're going to get the rent.
Yes.
For these people that can sleep calmly at night,
Yes.
thinking the money's flowing in for all directions for doing basically nothing.
Yes. Whereas the individual's thinking, what am I going to pawn today? Which service am I going to miss out on because I can't afford? You know, the old adage, heating or eating. Well, you wouldn't know where to finish, never let alone where to start.
But you don't need to talk about to the radical imagination about
The common
commons.
good. Yes.
And the common good. But I mean, that is the point. You know, I can never understand why there's all this land lying about the place that's been here for 500 years, that's publicly owned, has laws to protect it, and it's just exactly what we need. It's the same thing as a universal basic wage. It's the same idea.
Universal resource access.
It's the universal land.
Yeah.
You know, people's universal land rights, that they should be allowed to develop their own institutions and everything else and use the land freely. And we've got all these councils trying to flog it off to developers. Yes. And you're thinking they don't. And people used to say to me, but technically, Bob, this isn't Call Me Good land, it belongs to the council. And I'm thinking, well, technically, the council own nothing. The council have employees that are there to do what we tell them to do. They don't own anything. So as far as I'm concerned, it's all commons. It's all common good. And whether it is or it ain't, the council still has a responsibility to its people, the people it represent, when it's flogging this stuff off. And the universal income is part of that process of reclaiming the commons.
Yeah.
You know, it's a kind of basic right. If you don't do it, we'll die out as a species. You can't just keep taking off people, or we'll just die out.
Well, every business runs in profit and loss, and if all that you're getting is lost, then it's unsustainable.
And the saber-toothed tiger died out, and all these animals that were running about, you know, it's all this Darwinian, you know, the
survival
of the fittest, you know, and the saber-toothed tiger, all these big angry animals died out, they're extinct, and human beings are still here.
Because we're supposed to understand it.
Because we're social animals, and we like each other's company, that's why we can live in these big, horrible cities. It's because we can do that. Whereas a lot of these aggressive people, they'll become and they will become extinct. And when they do, we're going to have to be ready with something to put in its place, which is another important asset of using the universal basic wage to bring us back to a time where we could actually think without being frightened.
the consequences aren't that you're going to end up
And
destitute.
we always had the commons.
Mm.
You know, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're an asylum seeker, whether it doesn't matter. It's commons, it's common land. So everybody owns something
Yes.
or shares something. And when you take that away from people, what have they got? But unfortunately, we still have a lot of these things, and people have to waken up and start realising that and looking after them.
But essentially, the argument is that the same argument that advanced by Thomas Paine, rental income, collective wealth, we can get our basic income from transferring the rental income into capital funds, like the Norwegians have done, like the Alaska Permanent Fund, like Scotland should have done when North Sea oil or Scottish oil was found. But we can do it with high tech, we can do it with other sources of finance and so on. That's the essence of the argument. Middlesbrough was a little village in 1820, and they suddenly found iron ore there. And within 20 years, it became the center of the Industrial Revolution, the center of the British Empire, steel, Iron Gate Bridge in San Francisco, the Golden State Bridge, or whatever it's called, I forget. It was built with iron ore from Middlesbrough. The Sydney Bridge was built with iron ore from Middlesbrough. The railway system in India is built with iron ore from Middlesbrough, Teesside around. If you go to Middlesbrough today, you see derelict buildings, houses blocked up with concrete, little gardens overgrown with weeds. You see people hanging around on street corners. And you realize, of course, that these are the descendants of the people who created the wealth of Britain, of the whole part of all our country. Go to Glasgow and you will see the same things. Many communities like that. And yet in places like the southeast of England, the Toffs, who are descendants of the Toffs who made the money, are living life of fantastic luxury. Precariat of Middlesbroughs, many of them, have nothing. And of course, you go back to the Painian argument, when you see such communities, you realize the injustice that exists. But the second argument for a basic income is that it would enhance freedom. It's very important that those of us who propose basic income emphasize the freedom-enhancing properties of a basic income. The only way you can expect a human being to be a responsible citizen is if they have the adequate resources to be able to make decisions rationally. And you can only be moral if you have the capacity to make such decisions and are not being told what to do by some bureaucracy or some authority figure. That's the standard liberal view of freedom. A basic income deals effectively with poverty, or can do. It can reduce inequality. But more important than either of those things, a basic income provides people with a sense of security, a sense of psychological security, because you have an assured source of resources today and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow.
I think people would use it quite well.
Definitely, I mean, the whole point is it gives equality to the thoughts that you have. Apart from anything else, when you're driven by money, then you're driven by that attitude that you need finite resources. So this is not an absolute utopia saying that it's going to pay for everything. But what it does do is take away any responsibility to make decisions that are either or. It allows you to make proper informed decisions. And again, it's the idea of the health improving children. I mean, that's where the choice becomes, I don't need to buy 50 for £5. I can buy 5 for £5 because I've not only got a wee bit of the resources, but I'm now getting the freedom to understand that when I spend that £5 on that more nutritious food for that child, then I don't need to offset that against how I'm not going to be able to eat because I still need to pay that bill or that bill. So it provides equality.
But it's also that, I just noted in their values, it allows you to set values about what you see value in, rather than having all these forced values. Like, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Whether it's a political measurement or a financial value or
a fad or something that you see
fashion,
on the television that's cool.
Yes.
So you're able to set values for yourself and your kids, and help to educate your kids through these values. But I mean, when I think about it, when I was a kid, that's what it was. That's what you got off your parents. You get a set of values. You get these things that set you up for life in lots of ways. And if parents are stuck in a situation where it's only survival, they get scant time to teach their kids these values because they can't do it. They're locked out of the values. So how can they teach their kids about them when they're locked out of them themselves? So it's just a continuum. It just keeps going on, getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and obviously the parents having these values forced onto them by the burdens of the current interaction with society then forces these back down onto the children. So the minute that you stop that, you can then stop that catalytic effect.
Yeah.
But even at that, it's not just the direct effect on the children, it's obviously the direct effect on captive relationships, where one spouse or the other is locked into a relationship, or even worse, where an employee is locked into a job. Universal basic income will give him the opportunity to say, no, I'm worth an opinion. No, I'm worth a life. When you have political activists like Mrs May and Mrs Sturgeon voicing to the electorate that they feel socially responsible, but at the same time turning round and giving hand over fist the taxes back to employers, then I think that this universal basic income is the only way that voters are going to allow it to go. So I see it as being not only a solution, but I see it as being inevitable. Well, if you look at we don't have any manufacturing industry in the UK, let alone Scotland. I mean, the last of our computer factories are going when we have no shipbuilding to speak of. Everything that we used to do has been taken away. That really only leaves service type jobs. That again, when you don't make anything, what can you service? So the inevitability is that there is going to be a need to provide a better solution than what we have right now.
It's an imperative.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, an app on a phone can replace a whole team of people, a whole geographic location of people. We're seeing it at the moment with things like banks. Now, banks are making billions of pounds, literally £6 to £10 billion per bank per year, but they're still talking about cost-saving measures. Now, again, that's not making a profit, that's profiteering.
If they do these big wacky schemes, it becomes a value. This is, we're British. The big society and all this nonsense to spend all the money and the millenniums, remember the millenniums, or those millennium domes and all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to something like the National Health Service, it becomes a cost.
Yeah. Rather than investment.
Aye.
Which it is.
You know these big fanfare things to do is investment and showing the values of our community. Yet the National Health Service is always looked at as a cost. And even when people look at it, if you go out and buy a new car or something like that, or a new thing, it looks like your life has gained some value, and it's something that you should, that's good to look at. But we've got this brilliant National Health Service. Why can't we see that as a value?
Yeah. There's material wealth in keeping people healthy.
Aye, but why are we not sort of as proud of that as we are about buying a new car and different things? I always find that really strange, but particularly if people in this country go to another country like America or whatever, it's unbelievable what people have to pay just to get a simple operation done. And how it just crucifies people. We've got the rent here, but we've got a National Health Service. It's criminal, and the amount of money that's made off the health service. And that's what they're trying to import, bring in here, where the government's running down our health service, and to try and privatise it. It's just
Well, they're already proposing that we pay small fees for A&E visits.
Yeah,
and visits to GPs.
That's what we're saying with the universal basic wage isn't something like the right-wing idea about give everybody a few quid and then leave their own devices.
Yeah, disappear.
It's only one thing within all these other beautiful things we have, like a National Health Service and different things like that. And even if people were getting some money each week that they could use to buy good food for their kids, this and that, they would feel better about it, and their standard of life would go up, which means their health is going to improve and their mental health is going to improve. So it would save loads and loads of money. But that doesn't mean to say we do away with the National Health Service. That's still another thing. That we should value the same as having a universal wage.
Yes.
But we already have these things. So we really have to start valuing them a lot more soon, even before a universal wage. Because when they take them away, it'll be difficult or impossible to get them back again.
What we need to do is convince the administrations that the cost-benefit analysis on universal basic income shows that we're destitute without it.
Mm-hmm.
Because unless we rationalise how we apply any benefit system or any system of social responsibility, then it grows out of hand. It then becomes abused. It leaves things like administration charges almost as much as the actual outgoings that you're trying to save by producing administration reduction drives, etc. Now, we'll call them that, right, but we all know what they are. It's the personal independence payment plans, it's the sanctions, but again, that's absolutely the wrong way to go. The right way to go is to take on the social responsibility and allow some of the children to be better fed so that when they grow up, we have the lesson.
But the implementation of the thing, the question that people keep asking, okay, I agree, it's a good idea, but the idea about why does everybody get it?
Let me give you a brief answer to that. It's a subject we discuss at length in my books and elsewhere quite a lot. The best way of starting counter critique of that position is to recall a remark made by Richard Titmuss, who was one of the founding fathers of the welfare state after the Second World War. And he said that benefits that are only for the poor are invariably poor benefits. And there's a very good tradition of understanding of that. If you go to means testing, targeting on the poor, you've got to identify the poor. And not only got to identify the poor, but you've got to then identify the deserving poor. Because some people may choose to be poor through, their laziness or something, okay? You then have to set up means testing, which are invariably and without exception stigmatizing. They lead to huge, what we call type 1 and type 2 errors, statistical terms, but mainly people who should be receiving don't receive, and some people who should not be receiving, according to the criteria, end up receiving. And the administrative costs of doing that, as well as the stigmatizing effect of doing that, mean that a lot of people never apply for benefits to which they're entitled. My own father was a working class man out of pride, just out of pride when he needed it. He didn't apply for benefits because he just felt shame. It's not something I do. And you can respect that pride. I love him for it. But he was penalizing himself. But there are many, many, many millions of people who know what that means. It's actually much better to give a universal basic income and then tax it with a higher rate of tax, if you wish. I do wish, but that's a political decision. So you actually get it out, and you're going to have 100% or nearly 100% take up, because it's a right. You then remove the poverty trap at the bottom, because you say your basic income is non-withdrawable. In other words, you get it. And then any earned income, you start paying at the standard rate of tax. So you don't have the poverty trap. Of the 80%, you have 30% or whatever it might be. So you have actually greater incentive for people to go for low-wage jobs, because they're going to retain a higher percentage of the earned income that they get from doing those jobs. So for me, that the argument is that it won't increase inequality because you actually get it out. The people receive it. And the current situation is that huge numbers of the very poorest in our society, the very most insecure, are those that are not getting the entitlements to which they have a due.